All right, thank you for staying with Kenya's Choice 2022. Let's start that discussion on Elections Night Watch. We're waiting to hear whether the results will be announced in the different places: Kakamega, Mombasa, Rongai, Kacheliba, Pokot South. We'll find out from our reporters on the ground whether that is happening in just a bit. Professor Alfred Omenya is here with us, Urban Development Planner. Thank you for making time.
Thank you.
Asas Kalabaraku is also here, Public Policy Expert. Asante sana for making time. Dr. Duncan Ojuang is here, Dean, School of Law, Africa Nazarene University, and Franklin Mukwanja, Executive Director, CMD, that is Center for Multi-Party Democracy, is joining us from Kakamega. Let's start off with Franklin on this. Franklin, what is your assessment of IEBC's performance this time round in the postponed elections that have happened? One of them were in the county where you are.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. We have not just observed the elections in Kakamega, but also in other areas that are happening today. I would start by saying that IEBC seems to excel in by-elections or mini-polls, as this one has been christened, because the logistical burden is not as heavy as organizing a national elections countrywide. There is also the luxury of IEBC focusing and deploying possibly their best talents in some of those critical areas like the ICT sector. However, we still see teething problems, particularly the critical staff in terms of the critical officials that participate in election, and in particular the agents who seem not to get quite good coordination in terms of clearance and access to the polling stations as required. We still experience quite a bit of challenges in terms of the communication breakdowns and clarity on some of the electoral malpractices. In terms of the elections technology, we still witnessed the failure of KIMSKIT, particularly in Kakamega County. Things that you would have expected that the 20 days between 9th and 29th would have given IEBC some food for thought and possibly tried to fix those challenges. You will recall that even in the general elections of 9th, Kakamega County was one of the areas that had a widespread failure of elections technology. And of course, this works up against the voter psyche, and when such reports go out there, then you hear these quite negative feedback in terms of those ones that had intended even to spare some time to come and vote. So in terms of 1 to 10, I would give IEBC 5 until we see where the rubber meets the road in terms of elections tallying, counting, and the transmission of those results.
Okay. Dr. Juang, do you agree with that assessment that IEBC seems to excel in by-elections, but when it comes to presidential polls, then there's a lot of quagmire there?
Of course, given the magnitude of general election, but I think we're exhibiting the human nature where we agree with IEBC when the results are okay. Because looks like it's a very clear lead for ODM. We bash them when things don't go okay. And that is the nature, especially of Kenyans, that we embrace you when it works for us and we dismiss you when it does not work. I think that IEBC did unparalleled job compared to 2017 and implemented to the latter, exceeded what the Supreme Court had asked them to do. Of course, elections are done by fallible human beings. The issue of perfection and error will always accompany us, but the essence of election is, does it express the will of the people? And if you see from the level of concession that were made even after the general election, when you see from the level of satisfaction and even the number of court cases so far, they are very few. When you see from the Wazungu factor saying they have benchmarked with Kenya and they have seen unparalleled accountability, then you get to understand that albeit there is no good chemistry among the commissioners, albeit there is probably a little bit of lack of soft skills or disagreement on the results. Overall, you can say that we have seen a decent election.
But that is not what the petitioners believe. In fact, they believe the direct opposite of what you're saying.
Right. No, there is a lot of confounding variables. I saw one lawyer forwarded to me that he want to file a pleading about the effect of the music in Bomas to tally, because he also feel that is how ridiculous some of those petitions are. When he believe really he can prove to court how the music affected verification and overall. So, you know, you do not, you cannot count by the number of petitions. You know, I come from a place where we say, if fools don't go to the market, who will buy rotten bananas? So there is a functionality in having a fool go to the market so that they can buy rotten bananas. But when you look at majority of the affidavit and the issues, I will consider them rotten bananas with much due respect. Thank you.
Asaska, as you give your assessment of how ABC has performed in these by-elections, they are postponed elections. Is this a second time lucky compared to the first, the 9th of August?
Thank you, Trevor. Yes, it's true that these 8 elections have been postponed twice. First, it was on the 8th of August, just on our elections eve, due to the ballot mix-up. And the second time was 23rd of August, whereby the poll agency chair, Mr. Chebukati, alleged that there have been threats and harassment of the IEBC staff, and therefore he postponed it to today. Yeah. And we've seen that generally, largely, the elections were peaceful across the 8 regions, towns, and counties. And I'll add that the fact that it went very smoothly because it's just one election. Either it was the 4 member of parliaments, the 2 MCAs, and the 2 governors. And don't forget that on the 9th of August, we had 6 ballots. So I think there's just effectiveness of IEBC running one election or one type of election at a time. So I'll give it to them that things went quite smoothly, despite challenges with kids failing and with allegations of voter bribery and as well as some of the IEBC staff opening the polling stations a bit late. Yeah.
But Prof. Omenya, is this something we should consider? Staggered polls, like what Saska is saying, that then maybe there might be a bit more efficiency on that? Let's also give you assessment of how they performed today.
Trevor is interesting. In fact, with the performance, there's performance of IBC on one side, but then there's a voter turnout on the other side that you have to think about. I think a lot of Kenyans go to the polls to vote for 1 or 2 positions. So if you stagger polls, we may actually see something that is akin to these by-elections where nobody shows up. You can actually see that many people go to the polls to vote for the president and the governors and so on. But having said that, I think we need to somehow distance ourselves a little bit from IBC and what they're doing to be able to give them a fair assessment. As Dr. is highlighted here, really, and it's a complaint from the lawyers generally that there are very few petitions. and nobody, and there are very few complaints, you know, for the other positions. There are very few complaints about MCAs, about members of parliament, you know, governors, senators, and so on. The problem comes to, you know, when it comes to presidential. And the question really that one needs to engage with is, why are presidential elections in Kenya problematic? Election days themselves are not an issue. Right. In fact, we vote quite peacefully. The counting normally starts quite peacefully, and then in between, we are now hearing stuff that even Bollywood movie, would put Bollywood movie to shame. But I think what is clear is that, yes, on one hand, there's performance of IBC, but on the other hand, at least now we know for a fact that Kenyan presidential elections are interfered with by everybody, from the state to the contestants and so on, and they're very high stake. In fact, this time around, we are even hearing our intelligence, forces being mentioned in Kenyan presidential elections. And I think the issue may partly be IBC, but I don't believe it's a problem that will be solved by how we disband whether we disband the IBC or reconstitute it, because actually, right from the start, reconstitution of IBC and so on is done with presidential election in mind, and the performance is normally okay until it reaches the presidential election. And everything in the presidential election is normally okay until it comes to tallying and the outcome, the final outcome exactly were. Yeah. Yes, I think even as we, beam light on IBC and try to figure out what's happening, it might also be quite possible to give IBC the benefit of doubt and look at, Kenyan politicians who lack, basic political hygiene and behavior. It's only that it happens that they're very high offices, so nobody can actually come to citizen and say that maybe is our president behaving badly, or the deputy president behaving badly, or Right Honorable Raila behaving badly, or the military behaving badly, and so on. Those are things we don't touch. So it's easy to say Chebukati this and Cherera that and so on. And when it comes to the rest, somebody is told, no, be careful. You tread carefully, it's national sovereignty, and rightly so.
Yeah. Franklin, what are your thoughts on this? The question is, Omenya is mentioning that someone is behaving badly. We've seen this in the petitions without even getting into the merits of the entire petitions and who said what. The affidavits seem to contradict each other. People have their different prayers. Is that indication that the presidential election should be looked at in a much deeper way? And where does the buck stop? Should it be the IBC or the contestants?
I think it is important, the things that the Prof is mentioning. And we must not just look at the presidential elections in terms of the results, but the process really matters. And what happens soon after the elections is very significant. Let me speak briefly about the process and then go to the main focus that every Kenyan should really be alert on about the post-election era. And in terms of the process, we have now clearly confirmed that the close contest, the interests that drive these close contests, the interference with the process is not just an issue of by default, but it's really by design. We have spoken about the starving of IEBC in terms of budgets since 2018, when some of the people that Prof is mentioning threatened to revisit both the commission and the judiciary after the elections of 2017 were nullified. We have seen the dilly-dallying of completing the composition of IEBC and the appointment of critical staff in the very critical directorates that require to prepare for the elections. We saw attempts to try to remove the Chebukati and the two commissioners and Chebukati, and we've seen the various interferences. What really is worrying for me is that the previous commissions had some decency to behave and act nicely in public, basically putting up a brave face and some level of comedy that is very much Kenyan in terms of faking some of these things. But these ones have had very serious disagreements in public, that we are no longer embarrassed about the undercuttings and the underhand, the under-table dealings that are interfering in the process. But even if we were to treat that by fixing how we've structured IEBC and how we become a little bit serious on appointing these commissioners, the issues of post-election, how we need to increase political accountability, how we need to make these democratic institutions to improve on their performance, are issues that we have to go beyond just saying William Ruto will remain president-elect and be sworn in, or the elections will be overturned, and then we have a fresh election. My worry is that going into the post-election phase, we are relying on these same characters that have been elected to vet the IEBC appointees, because there are only two ways, Trevor. One is that the Supreme Court will dismiss the petition, or the Supreme Court will acquiesce with the petition. Either way, we will have half the commission in trouble, and will need again to fill it. There will be either the three going home in January with a bad name, or we will have the four remaining with still egg on their face. So the focus should actually shift away from who is going to be the next president, but how do we make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes in 2022? And how do we make sure that the period, the intervening period between 2022 and 2027, we have heightened our abilities as citizens to engage in governance. Participation has been, augmented, and we participating in governance as a people. Political accountability is heightened, that democratic institutions beyond IEBC are really performing, because if we leave IEBC to be trampled upon, we're going to find other critical institutions, and we're not even mentioning them. Commissions, independent commissions, were starved of budgets. They have not been able to do their build-up work towards elections. Just recently, we are seeing, the commission, the judiciary getting their budget ring-fenced as per the Constitution. But before that, we had judges not being appointed when they had been, recruited in a fair process, constitutional process. So these are the issues that we need to focus on beyond who becomes the 5th president of Kenya, because if we don't fix these institutional failings, then we will still find ourselves in the same challenges in 2027 and asking ourselves, when did the rain start beating us?
Yeah. And let me bring in Dr. Juang on this. How then can IBC be made to be above reproach? Because either way, whatever outcome from the Supreme Court, someone is going to be aggrieved, either uphold or nullify. But we've seen in public 4 commissioners dissenting from the other 3. How then can IBC be made to be above reproach?
Right. The word dissenting is a word of art in law in terms of judgment and ruling. Let's just say disagreeing. And then what is due to that disagreement in law? Because what is due for each commissioner is a subject of law. So whether 6 commissioner or 4 or 5 commissioner disagreed on an issue, is it an issue that is rightly before the commission? And is it an issue that they have a right under the law? So what commissioners are entitled to is a subject of law and not the whims of the strong person or whoever is pushing for much more. And that is why, to me, the disagreement, we will have done better with less disagreement, but it is not a prerequisite at all. To me, the issue is simple. It's about verifying the will of the people through the Form 34A. But be as it may, I think that the Kenya election generally, let us not think that throwing more laws will help this country. Even to follow law is a moral choice. So law does not make you follow it. If you think that following law is a good thing because you are a moral person, you will follow the law. because of morality, not because of law. And so we need to work on what Professor Menya was saying of our political hygiene, of feeling that let the institution work. Let them be uncaptured. Let them serve Kenyans. Let them serve the purpose. I don't think I cannot imagine what else can be done, because unlike probably any other country, we have in every election a dual system, both of manual and digital. If you go to US or any other country, they have either or. So they either do a manual election and they are satisfied with it. Here, we are running both systems. To make it possible, if somebody messes with one side, the other side can be used to verify. Remember to some extent that our voting is still manual. Our counting is manual. And therefore, you find that we have over-invested in election, and honestly, there is nothing more to do. Having two parallel systems in every election, having Form 34A with 9 security features that we saw being scanned for the security features for 4 days in Bomas, even though the voting and the tallying happened in 1 day, it took 4 days. And they were tallied, and both parties had their agents, and then at crucial juncture, there was a disagreement on even what was being tallied, or whether there was the issue of digital or hacking, even though people looked at, verified, actual Form 34A. Remember what IBC was saying? This thing will be filled in duplicates. There is 5, 6 copies. Each party agent will get a copy. The one will be inside the ballot box, one on top or on the side of the ballot box, the other one on the door of each polling station. The 44,600 polling station had this, did this, was physically brought to Bomas. So if that cannot satisfy Kenyans, then you realize that probably we are dealing with a deeper problem. Might take which logic, but the investment in election, the unparalleled tally, so that when the commissioners disagree, and they are disagreeing, you can tell. So far, what do we know? We know that the National Intelligence Committee members visited Chebukati in the back room. They have admitted. The content of what they said, there is dispute about that. What do we know? We know that Tuju and Wako visited Chebukati at the back room. The content of that, there is dispute what Chebukati is saying vis-a-vis what Tuju is saying. Now, when you look at the whole environment in Bomas, by Wednesday we were there, and all we hear is that this has become a crime scene. And we kept, and the commissioner kept reminding the agents that you don't bring votes here. Your votes are at the polling station. We are verifying them here. Now, where are we in this context? And that is why I'm laying this down, that because I believe that you'll be shocked that court will not have such drama, because most of these things cannot make it to court. So you cannot come with the issue, for example, of the Venezuelan hackers, while we are verifying the form and we are saying what is the tally. To what extent is this agreement or disagreement affecting the results? And to what extent is there disagreement about what is due for them by law? So Kenyans have a very bad tendency of throwing laws at their lack of morality and thinking law will fix them. Law cannot fix anybody. To follow law, what Ogendo is saying, constitution without constitutionalism. To follow law is a moral choice. Other countries are doing much better with less law, with much more opaqueness, to use that word, but they're okay with it. So we have reached a point where there is nothing that can be done until we probably just decide that we become better people.
Okay. I have to take a quick break. Saska, I know you were itching to respond, and Omenya also on this issue of whether we should restructure IBC or not, whatever the outcome of the poll, of the presidential petition at the Supreme Court, because there's been a disagreement in the commission. But keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Kenya's Choice 2022. We're back in just a bit.